Welcome to The Point of View. This is your favorite current affairs show on television. On The Point of View, we get the right guests, ask them relevant questions on issues that matter to you. We are live and interactive tonight with only one agenda: to examine the Vice President's delivery on Thursday, which was his response, presumably, to critics who had said he had gone into hiding following the tanking of some of our economic fortunes. His spokesperson is my guest tonight to be asking him why his vice president, why his boss chose the angle he chose. He will also ask him to clarify some apparent contradictions in the speech and also lay out some clarity on where our economy is. All of that in the next 50 minutes or so. Stay with us. Welcome back. So tonight we review Dr. Bawumia's speech on the economy, which he delivered on Thursday at a TESCON conference, which speech lasted almost 2 hours, which touched on various aspects of the economy. Now, why he chose to speak now, I'm sure his spokesperson will explain. What he said, we will examine. And whether all of them are true, we'll also see. But the most important question is, where does that leave the economy and where do we go from here? Mind you, prior to his speech, there had been 3 critical speeches. The MPC of the Bank of Ghana had held an important session. The governor had charted out a path for our monetary aspect of our economic recovery. The finance minister afterwards also gave some indication of further cuts that the government was putting in place to help revamp the economy. Then the president gave his 28th COVID address and followed that up with the State of the Nation address. So those were the 3 critical things that have happened before this. Doc, welcome to the show. Good evening.
Good evening, Bernard.
How are you doing?
I'm good, and you?
I'm well. I'm sure you were part of the team that put the program together. Why did he choose to speak at this time? Because I know that there'd been calls and taunts and mockings about his silence. So why this last week to respond to all of those things?
Yeah, thank you very much, Bernard. First of all, I don't think there was any silence. Anybody who follows the Vice President, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, knows that he's the type that way back from opposition to the time that he came into government makes his views known on national issues. And in the schedule of activities of the Vice President, he has been speaking throughout the year, I mean, from 2017 till now. And depending on the subject for the program that he attends, he speaks to different teams. And so the whole question of he being silenced is something that baffles me, because for this year, if my memory serves me right, the Vice President has been out there attending different public fora, in not less than 20 of them. Even today, he was in Ashanti region to launch the National Youth Volunteer Program. So almost every time the Vice President goes out there to speak. But let me say that aside the different speeches, addresses that he delivers at different programs consistently from opposition till now, it appears every year he takes one day to do a major public engagement that is publicized widely. So I think the difference is the scope of publicity for the different programs that he attends. You remember from 2017, in 2017, there was this 100-day achievement program that he did with multimedia.
I see.
And that was a one-off program which was widely covered.
Where he said he had arrested the CD.
Exactly.
And given the key to the IGP.
And then 2018, there was a similar lecture like that. In 2019, remember, prior to Ghana exiting the IMF program, the Vice President also organized what we termed as the first economic management team town hall meeting on 3rd of April.
Where he announced the reduction
import duties, benchmark values, all of that. And in 2020, some few weeks to the general elections, he did what we call the closing argument.
I see.
That was also widely publicized. And last year, we took time to kind of have a conversation on the whole digital economy agenda, where he also spoke.
So your point is that it's an average of 1 a year since he became vice president?
Yes, it's an average of 1 a year, and even in opposition.
I see.
Remember, he was attending different programs, party rallies, and all of that. But the lectures that he used to do, like the one he did with Central University, And then 2016, 15, he did another one. 2016, he did another one. So it is not.
So you are dealing with the issue of the frequency, that it's not out of the ordinary.
No, not at all.
So the other question is, what was he trying to do? Was he going to give an explanation of where we were as an economy, or was he going to respond to critics that his level of all the claims he made prior to being elected were now obviously not true or not working? What was the agenda of the speech?
Yeah, so the agenda of all these lectures has been doing since 2017. It's to deepen our democratic ethos and democratic governance. You know, leaders are elected to work on the mandate of the people, and they have to be accountable. So the accountability calls for public officials also explaining matters, giving an account of what they have done based on the mandate of the people, and also telling us where they think we are going, especially when there are challenges, coming out to let us know where the problems are coming from, what they are doing about it, or what the future is. So the whole concept of the vice president coming out to speak is not necessarily for any personal objective, but to say that, look, I mean, we are elected into leadership. There seemed to be some level of, disturbance in the atmosphere as far as economic issues are concerned. Prices are high. People are complaining of money not in the pocket. We're having the ramifications of COVID-19, Russia-Ukraine war, and all of that. Government leaders have come out to explain matters. Finance Minister has spoken, the President has spoken, Bank of Ghana has come with interventions. And as the Vice President also, as being part of the government, he felt there was a need to, deepen this whole democratic governance thing and be accountable to the people. And so government decision was also that subsequent to all these...
So was he under pressure to speak?
Not at all.
Not under pressure, no problem. Let me read one of the emails I got to you. I actually got my team to put it on the screen. This is something somebody sent me a couple of days ago in the morning. It says, "Good morning, Bernard. To be honest, I was surprised the Vice President went on the same political tangent. For once, it's on the screen. I thought he was going to move away from his typical kind of speeches, yet here we are. Between December and March, a friend has lost 2 million cedis as a result of Forex losses. His business has almost collapsed. Look at the sharp rise with price of goods. Embargo. Even with milk, 9 cedis. It's averagely 20 cedis now. This is the result of poor management of the city. We do not need this at this material point in our lives. Tell us what you are doing to deal with the canker." This is somebody who has an LLB, an MBA, and a BL. I won't mention his name for security reasons, but he sent this to me very frustrated. So a couple of things. He says, he thought because of the times we are in, the Vice President will not take a political tangent, but he did. And that he then gives an example of somebody losing 2 million cedis in 9 months and how prices of goods have gone up. So this is somebody's view, which I think a lot of people share, that if this was even a time for a speech, this was not a time to come and compare records or gloat that you are better than your opponent. This was a time to give people hope, which unfortunately some people did not get from the speech.
Well, I must say that different people have ways that they look at things and understand and appreciate matters differently. What I did not see clearly in the person's email, although there are quite fantastic issues that he raised, is a point that about what he actually thinks should have been the matter to talk about. He may have his own view as to what the Vice President should have addressed. And if he's talking about solutions, I don't think if he followed the Vice President presentation very well, he can tell us he didn't see any interventions or solutions proffered in the presentation. When it comes to presentations of this nature, and you're sitting at where the Vice President sits, of course, he is sitting down as an apolitical person. Nobody takes away that. So the way he sees things may be different. So his part of the issue that talks about the Vice President should talk about solutions. That one was catered for by the Vice President. There's this understanding that we also have to come to appreciate. When we elect leaders through the political platform and they seek to address issues, I find it quite a bit, I don't know how, for want of a better word, how people would want a politician to address things of national character and will not seek to explain things to the best of his or her understanding.
I can give you a difference. When the president speaks in his COVID addresses, he doesn't do politics. If you listen to his 28th address, the president spoke about where we were with COVID and why we were supposed to now remove the last of the COVID restrictions. He was speaking to address a national concern. He didn't mention the NDC once. He didn't talk about anything politics. He basically said, we've come a long way, and after all that has been done, he's also adding these things. So I think the guy's point is that where we are in the country, we expect to hear from the vice president from a national perspective, not from a partisan perspective.
Did you hear any reference to the NDC?
Oh, throughout the speech, there were. It was record comparison throughout.
No, you see, when you compare when you try to compare records based on periods,
yes,
anybody can read any meaning into it.
But that's politics.
Please, there was no mention of the NDC.
Oh, but we all know you were talking about the NDC.
You see, it will be very unfortunate for anybody to say that Bawumia come and address to the issues. We are chastising you, or we are complaining about your record, exchange rate issues, blah, blah, blah. When Mr. Mahama went out to say that Bawumia has been silent, we all saw the commentary in town.
But that was a different time. Now we are in an economic crisis.
So Mr. Mahama spoke some few weeks ago.
But he's an opposition leader.
Yeah,
but you are in government.
You see, so once Bawumia is also a politician,
so he's reacting to Mahama.
He has to address the issues that are on the hearts of people. And part of the issues is that he has to prove his record. How do I prove my record for you to understand? I am better if I don't make a comparison.
But people are suffering now. So if you say why are you telling me you are better now? Because we are in an economic crisis. The governor admits that, the finance minister admits that, the president admits that. So this is not the time to come and tell me you are better.
So when people are complaining about suffering, why are they complaining? They are complaining because they think things are not going the way they want.
Yes.
And we are in a political space.
So you should come and do politics and react to them politically?
There's nothing wrong for a politician to address national issues and also respond to critics.
So he was doing politics?
No, he was not. He was speaking to the nation. But don't let us think that if you make such an address and you take time to also respond to critical questions on the minds of people, have people not been asking the question about why are prices up? Why is the city depreciating? Are the economic fundamentals weak or strong? How do I tell you something is stronger if I don't give you a comparative term for you to know that this is where we're coming from and this is where we are?
Let me read something Yaunsaku posted. Okay, this was A. Sankumar posted it, but I guess it was something written by Yaunsaku, who you know. He says, point 4A, we should depoliticize commentary on the economy. I suspect if Bawumia had a chance now, he would have been more measured about some of the things he said previously about exchange rate, petrol prices, and so on. These are issues that are not always fully in our hands. This was a long analysis, and he said a lot of things. I'm just picking this to tell you that this idea of the economy and politicization, which you are justifying, can come back and become X on your face, which appears to be the situation.
No. I think there's a whole national conversation on this whole petrol politicization and economy discussions politicization. But the reality we need to face is that much as we demand accountability from our leaders, and we may want to make judgment as to go with A or B, we must also allow room for people to tell us what they think they are doing that is better than where they took us from. There's nothing wrong with that. Even in our own natural settings, it is natural that when there are competition or there are two competing sides and you want to make your case, we do our own analysis, CTF. You may want to compare records of this year to last year when you're doing your projections and all of that. It doesn't take anything away. The most important thing is that whilst you want to look back and see where you're coming from to see whether you've made progress or not, you also put in place measures to deal with the pressing issues. And I think that's the most important thing.
But if you listen to his points, he's basically saying that because some of the factors like exchange rate, we know that these are cyclical issues. in addition to other structural issues. We know that the petrol price is not in our hands. So if you make political capital out of that in opposition, when you get into government, you essentially face the calls he faces. And he's basically saying that in retrospect, this is not the way to go. And it looks like the vice president, with all his eloquence, is one of the people who has managed to bring the economy into forefront politics. For example, when he says, if the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you. Then he has to come around and say, well, but if the exchange rate is depreciating, doesn't mean the fundamentals are weak. A lot of different things like this, where he makes a statement in opposition, which is easy to make. He comes into government and realizes that it's not. I'll give an example. So even in 2019, the speech you make reference to, he came and said that at the port, the most important determinant of revenue was volume and not the level of the tax. Well, the budget of last year essentially debunk all of that, because the benchmark value was effectively, they said they wanted to reverse the reduction, which is a complete overhaul of that. And there are many examples where he comes to make a statement which sounds nice politically, but the reality exposes that what he said is either not true or it's not the reality.
No, but you see, you can't say that. He was talking about revenue. And it's a P times Q thing, price times quantity. So when he makes the case that if you want to increase revenue, it's not necessarily increasing your P, your price. You can just increase the quantity, even though price may not go up and still make the same revenue. It is true. Okay? As to when you get to the grounds, based on measures and policies that you put in place, you'll be able to realize that by reducing price and increasing quantity, or increasing price and reducing quantity, that is operational matters. But you can't say when the vice president makes that case, and these are best examples that you can get across the globe. The countries that want to make huge revenue from the port, it's not just a matter of increasing your price, the taxes. If you're able to increase volumes, you're able to make that. That is a factual statement.
But he used that statement to announce a policy reduction.
Exactly.
Which did not benefit, which did not reflect on the ground in the revenue we got, which is why the finance minister in the budget announced a reversal.
Okay, so we need to interrogate GRA at the finance ministry to see why is it that when the prices were made stable or brought down for us to get more volumes, to increase our revenue, we didn't get it that way.
It just means the assumptions you made were wrong. That's what it means.
It's not just about the assumptions. You make the assumptions and you're supposed to go and implement it. If there are implementation lapses, that is something we have to do. But you can't say that when the vice president makes the case, citing best examples, that if we want to increase revenue at the port, let's not just focus on increasing taxes. Let's put in place efficiency that will make sure the volumes increase, and even if the price don't increase,
and then after reducing the rate a year and a half, the volumes don't increase, the revenue doesn't come in, and the finance minister then announces that he's going to reverse the reduction, which clearly suggests either what he was saying was not factual or it hadn't been well thought through. And then he didn't address it in the speech, which is another problem. So you speak in April 2019, make such a major policy announcement. You say you are coming to respond to what's happening in the economy. 2 years later, you don't even make one mention of the benchmark value. And you are saying, what you expect Ghanaians to believe that you are consistent?
But there was an earlier decision taken on the benchmark values this year.
Yeah, but he should own the decision.
You see, you're pinning it to just find a way to attack Bawumia, which is wrong.
For what purpose?
What I'm saying is
what do I gain from doing that?
What I'm saying is that the statement he made, that is a foresighted statement that any good leader should make. Don't let us focus on taxing people at the ports. Let's see how we can increase volumes, okay, to get higher revenue.
Good.
That is a policy direction.
Good.
That the vice president made. Once the vice president makes that policy direction, we need to make sure those who are at the base implementing the policy are able to implement it to the latter to ensure that critically what we're talking about comes to realization. Today, you're saying that we didn't get the increased volumes as the vice president had,
Doesn't he want an explanation?
Talked about. And when he comes to address the nation on matters of the economy, and you are saying specifically, this matter should have been addressed, a plethora of issues that should have been... He chooses
to ignore the most essential policy. I'm not trying to hackle you. You said in April 2019, every year he gives one speech. The 2019 speech was about the benchmark values. 2 years down the line, he's addressing the economy. This issue has become so controversial. He doesn't make a mention of it. The E-levy is the most important economic issue in Ghana at this time. He gives a 2-hour address. He mentions the E-levy once. How are you telling me?
What were you expecting him to say beyond that on the
Because he has said in a radio interview that we will not tax mobile money. So if the government decides to tax mobile money, he needs to explain why the government made that U-turn. And that is just consistency. He didn't do that.
You see, E-levy is a government policy. The conversations before the passage of the bill in Parliament is not the same today. Before, we were trying to seek clarity, justify why E-levy was needed, and make sure that we're able to get higher revenues to show up to support the budget. Today, and as at the time the Vice President spoke, E-levy had been passed. What is important is to look forward to see how the proceeds that are coming from E-levy will be put to proper use and people can have, value for money. That's basically what we are confronted with now. Now it is a government policy. It is part of our tax handles. That's why when the Vice President talked about taxes that were abolished or reduced under this government, also came to talk about taxes that have been introduced. He had to mention E-levy as part of the taxes.
But let's make an announcement.
We
already knew that.
You see, the dearth of comments on E-levy that you may wish him to say may not be the thinking of government as at this time in terms of the narrative on E-levy. It is a task now. Okay, how are we going to make sure that we put that revenue to good use and people can have value?
Okay, but what if he said, at least we should know whether he still believes what he said in that interview. Because he did a radio interview where he very categorically said, I don't think we should tax Momo. And so if the government that he's the head of EMT has taken that decision, has his position changed or the reality has changed? Why doesn't he make any...
Why are you talking about government? You're talking about government because government is made up of different people.
Yes.
Okay? It doesn't matter if on the table I have a different opinion and you have a different opinion. At the end of the day, we conform to superior argument, and the decision of government is the decision of government. It binds all of us. All of us are part of it. So why should he come out to say personally...
For consistency's sake.
What is the
For credibility's sake.
What is the credibility? The credibility thing is that government has taken a decision, and the Vice President is not outside government.
No problem.
He's
I'm not saying you should disagree with government. I am saying that for us to believe a politician, when he says something today, he must be consistent in what he says. Now, if the position has changed, because if he says, I do not believe that mobile money should be taxed, and the government's major policy revenue decision is based on taxing Momo, either how the decision was taken or whether his view still stands. Are you telling me that because he agrees the decision, explain to us?
When cabinet takes a decision,
yes,
and that decision is communicated, cabinet and government decides how to communicate the decision. And I don't think the way government communicated the decision is wrong. So on the table, cabinet may not have to come and say that when the decision on E-levy came, A voted for it, B voted against it. That is not how government communicates. Government ramps up the whole discussion and says that cabinet has taken a decision that we want to go with E-levy. We see the mandate of the people for support. It council people debate back and forth, go to parliament, it has been approved. It is not for the Vice President or me or any other person to come and say that when the decision was being taken, I supported it or I stood against it. That is not proper. You don't do that, okay? So it's a government decision. And government decision is government decision. All of us actors in government are bound by the decision. Why would anybody want to say that, yes, government have taken a decision, but you come out to say whether you supported it or not? It's neither here nor there.
This is the point of view. We're talking to Gideon Boako, who is the Vice President spokesperson. We're trying to understand the context of the Thursday speech. When we come back, we'll look at some details of the speech, some issues that have come up that require clarification. Send us your comments. It's live on the WhatsApp number on the screen. Welcome back to The Point of View. Tonight, our guest is Dr. Gideon Boako. He's a Vice President spokesperson. We're trying to understand the context of the speech on Thursday and also trying to see where there is clarity on the economy. So there are a couple of issues. So one of the challenges people had with the speech was when we said they were comparing records. And I'll give you an interesting example. So for exchange rates, and this is not a very good example, but it helps. If somebody took a mortgage which requires him to pay, say, $100 a month in 2009 under mills. If you look at where the CD was at the time and where the CD is today, so in 2009, the CD was 0.9 to the dollar. All right, so he was paying 90 CDs. to the $100. Now, in March 2022, the figure reached 6.88. As of the time the vice president was giving the lecture, it was around 7.5. So somebody who was paying 900 cedis is now paying 750 cedis, 90 cedis is now paying 750 cedis. This is what the person's interest is. If you tell the person that the rate of depreciation of the cedi was higher under Muhammad than under Nanado, how does that help such a person who used to pay 90 cedis to the $100 to 750 cedis today? Why is that? Why is it important for you to tell me that the rate at which the currency depreciates under me is lower than this person?
Yeah, Bernard, you're right. I think we all come to the agreement that as for exchange rate depreciation and its exposures, even if it is 0.001%, depending on the volumes of transactions you're talking about, it becomes quite significant, isn't it? So nobody wants to get up today and hear about a currency depreciating, especially those in the business field. It becomes quite a pathetic situation when you have your currency become a bit unpredictable and seems to kind of assume that kind of sinusoidal movement. And so all governments would wish that their currencies don't depreciate. And mind you, even when your currency depreciates, for us, that a country like Ghana, that goes to the Eurobond market to even borrow in foreign currencies, come to Ghana, get cedis. Even if you don't borrow more and your currency depreciates, your dry stock increases. So it has a huge consequences for government and businesses. So the wish of every manager of the economy is that we don't get our currency depreciating. But the reality also is that, of course, there's no need to go back to history to blame anybody. But the structure of our economy is such that we become largely import dependent. And so it makes it quite difficult to have full control on the currency movement, especially when it is a matter of demand and supply. And so we are at that position, and we're also practicing the floating exchange rate regime that we've allowed our currency to tumble up and down depending on the circumstances. So I do agree with you that currency depreciation is not anything good for any businessman, for the ordinary person in the street, for government itself, and all of that. But what we do as, analysts, economists, and all of that is sometimes you may also want to look at the time series and the data. Every economist want to go back to history to look at the historical trends to see how the movements have been going and see whether or not reasons can be assigned for some particular deviations or outliers. And that's basically what we did. We just produced the Bank of Ghana data. So the data Vice President produced was not just to compare NDC or NPP. We produced Bank of Ghana historical data.
But he was looking at a rate of depreciation. But if you look at the CD versus the dollar since record started, it's just one direction.
Oh yeah,
it's been falling, which suggests a structural issue.
Yeah.
So one of the key questions people have asked is, what structurally have we done, or has this government done, to reverse that trend?
Yeah, I will not say just this government. I think previous governments have put in their effort to the best of their ability to ensure that we get, the key structural things in place to ensure how we can diversify the economy and not just be dependent on imports, get the raw materials, processed into finished goods so that we can get enough foreign exchange. I think if you want to zero in on this government, the policy of one district, one factory, although we're running at a snail's pace, we've gone far with it. And I'm sure once we get in all these industries and manufacturing firms in place to make sure we're able to process our raw materials to get more export, that is one way of looking at it. It's not to say that is the solution in itself. There are a whole broad of issues that we need to tackle as a country, but it's unfortunate that over the years, some of them have been just lip service.
But do you admit that the time he said he had locked the Ghana CD and given the key to IGP, it was completely premature, because we've admitted that the currency is a structural issue. So if, because at the time you've borrowed money and shored up the currency, you come and announce in a high-profile program that you have arrested the CD and given the key to the IGP, clearly That cannot be true, as events have shown.
No, the context within which the Vice President spoke at the time was not wrong. Basically, he was talking about the rate of depreciation, and especially when we had come from a depreciation of, say, 9.4% to averages at the time he spoke, around 3% within that time. Definitely, if any economist is making a comment, it was right for the economist to say that the speed at which the currency depreciates has been slowed down. And so if she says that we've arrested the rate of depreciation at the time, the evidence and the data at the time supported that clearly, based on what government had done, the speed of depreciation had slowed down. So that was a factual statement to make. But, you know, as to whether or not you're able to hold on to that till time till is something else. So,
but even with the claims, Doc, if you listen to Dr. Bawumia very carefully, for example, in the 2020 August speech, he said that under Akufo-Addo's administration, we are seeing the lowest depreciation of the cedi since 1992. Okay. Now, in this speech, he says we have seen the lowest depreciation of the cedi for a first-term government, because he obviously realizes that the 2017 to 2021 figure of 6.8 is higher than the 2005-2008 of Kufuor. Why are you people writing these things for him to say? Like, we've had the lowest depreciation since this, we've had the highest growth since that. A lot of these claims, I don't know how they help the conversation at this point.
So there are two things. One is to look at it whether what he said is true or not. It passes the test of whether true or false. It is true. Okay? Then you come to the other issue of whether or not you think it is necessary. The fact that he made a statement which is factual is factual. And that is data. I mean, if you're speaking to data, you speak to data. And once you speak to data and the data is factual, you talk about it. But the question of relevance and whether or not at the time it is important is something that anybody can put a subjective view on. We cannot
but not everything he said was factual.
Which one is not factual?
Oh, there are quite a number. So, for example, he said that despite these tax reductions, the data shows that revenue collection in the nominal terms, this is page 48, by the way, of the speech. Despite these tax reductions, the data shows that revenue collection in nominal cedi terms has increased by 25% annually since 2017. Now, if you take the Ministry of Finance's data, the year-on-year growth of revenue collected is given, and it is not 25% since 2017. The Ministry of Finance gives the data. I can give you 2016, 35.5 billion. 2017, 39.9. 2018, 46.5. 2019, 52.3. 2020, 53.8. If you take the year-on-year growth, the highest was 2017 of 23%. 2018 is 16.8%. 2019 is 12.7%. 2020 is 2.9%. So that's one.
So let me give you the figures I have here. 2016, 24.2. Growth, 2017 30.4, 2018 37.7, 2019 42.5, 2020 44.7, 2021 56.5. If you look at the percentage increase from 2016 to 2017, it's 26%. 2017 to 2018, 24%, 2018 2019, 13%, 2019 2020, 4.4%, 2020 2021, 27%. That's where we're getting the average from.
So you average the year-on-year. Well, the figures I have from the Ministry of Finance maybe what I have.
There's the data.
What I have is 23% for 2017, 16.8 2018, 12.7. Fair enough. Then the other points, there seems to be an over-exaggeration of your success and an under-representation of the NDC. I'll give you an example. Again, this is page 53. In fact, the average rate of growth for GDP 2017-2021, it says the average rate of growth between 2017 and 2021 is 5.3%, which is true. But this compares with an average rate of 3% between 2013 and 2016, when you had no COVID, when you had no Ukraine war of 3%. If you take that period, 2013 to 2016, 2013, 7.3, 2014, 2.8, 2015, 2.1, 2016, 3.3, total 15.6, average is 3.9. 3.9, if you round it off, is 4. When you average 2017, 8.1, 2018, 6.2, 2019, 6.5, 2020, 0.4, 2021, provisional 5.3, total 26.5, average is 5.3. So in the case of the period under his review, he uses the decimal point of 5.3. All right, but for the period prior, he says 3%. How can 3.9 become 3%?
He was not talking about 2017 to 2020. He talked about 2017 to 2019.
But why do you do that?
No. He was talking about pre-COVID.
Oh,
no, please.
What's the point in doing that?
You see, you don't.
No, but if you
please,
if you take 2017, 2019, you don't get 5.3.
I'm coming.
2017,
no,
2019,
I'm coming. Let's deal with the
5.3.
points first.
It's not correct.
The points and the issues that the NDC people put out was just to misrepresent what he said.
This is actually Media Foundation, not NDC.
I'm coming. They are following the same trend. They just copied what Ofosuku actually put on the Facebook page. Okay, see, I'm telling you.
Okay, explain this.
Because
explain this to me.
He had talked about 2017 to 2019. Then they go and strike average from 2017 to 2020. You don't do it that way.
But if you strike the average from 2017 to 2019, it's not 5.3. So it couldn't have been 2017 to 2019.
No.
2017 is 8.1. 2018 is 6.2.
Bernard, I'm coming. The point is that what Media Foundation or they put out there, it's not right.
No, but we don't have the figures.
No, but you're telling me they had extended the period for the computation, and they were getting the figures they are getting.
The man said the average rate of growth of GDP from 2017 to 2021 is 5.3%. This is a direct quote. This is a direct quote from page 53 of the speech. You can check.
Page 53
of the speech. I can open it for you. Page 53 is exact.
Let me read. After a period of sluggish and declining growth, a real GDP growth picked up from 3.4% in 2016 to an average of 6.9% between 2017 and 2019, figure 10. There is no comparison from 2017 to 2021. I mean,
well, maybe you are reading a different version of the speech. The speech I have has
Bernard, this is the speech. They are you see, they are putting their own figures out there. All these fact checkers and Media Foundation thing. Excuse me.
That is the work we do. You see, you cannot pick and choose when.
Listen, Bernard, I'm telling you what the Vice President said. They are putting their own things out there.
Really?
What they are putting out is not in the speech of the Vice President. I mean, I'm surprised.
Maybe you have an updated speech.
No. I'm telling you what the Vice President, and we all listen to him. You can play the video.
Well,
okay, you can play the video. We all listen to the Vice President. This is exactly what the Vice President said, not what Media Foundation has put out.
No, this is not about Media Foundation. There are so many issues. For example, the President, during his State of the Nation, said that our COVID expenditure was 17.7 billion. Right? This is what the President said on paragraph 19. The Vice President says COVID expenditure is 8 billion. Somebody has to be telling us something wrong. So if you go to paragraph 19 of the President's State of the Nation address, he says, we spent in total 17.7 billion, which is 4.6% of GDP on containing the pandemic. Unquote. Doc says we spent 8.1 billion on COVID, which is which?
Okay, so basically, you see, during the COVID time, different support came in different forms. Some of them partly were debt, some were wholly debt, others were also program supports. So what the Finance Ministry has done, and this expenditure that the Vice President talked about was to talk about the 3 expenditure items that have contributed about 50.1 billion to our debt. And the COVID expenditure solely related to COVID interventions was 8.1. That excludes other inflows that came during the COVID time for budget support. Okay, so there are part of the inflows, and I think the President talked about the totality of it, that came for the COVID purposes. Some of them were to make up for the revenue shortfalls that government experienced as a result of the COVID. Importation was slow and all of that. So IMF and the World Bank and other agencies came to give budget support, program support to some specific programs that were not related to the COVID. And so if you distill the two, you get a component of the COVID inflows that came purposefully for program support in the budget, and the ones that came specifically for PPEs, for food and all of that for the COVID. And that is what comes to 8.1 billion.
So the Vice President's reference was to a specific...
On the specific COVID expenditure, not as part of the program support in the budget.
So the President had an expanded...
Exactly.
But where did you get the 17 billion excess capacity charge? Because the Finance Minister went to Parliament in June last year, and when he was asked by Suhini how much we have spent on excess capacity payments, he said it was 937 million dollars, right? And I even have the document here. The economy was on the verge of collapse, and a legacy take-or-pay contract saddled our economy with annual excess capacity charge of close to 1 billion. This was a separate point. But then before that, he said that we paid AXA 347.2, 359 to Car Power, 231 for Sem Power from 2017 to 2020. When you put all of that together, that's 937. And if $937 million is about 6 billion cedis, but Doc is saying 17 billion. Where did you get that from?
Yes, so remember, this has been put out there by our colleagues in the NDC just to suggest that the vice president lied, just to dip in their own whole tag of trying to paint the vice president black. But they got it wrong. The question the honourable member asked in Parliament and the response given by the finance minister was in respect of just 3 IPPs. That is AXA, Car Power, Sen Power, okay? And that is what figure, when you put together, comes to the 935. And remember, there are a lot more IPPs than just 3 IPPs. And so in totality, if you look at this summary of payments to IPPs that I have, the payment that have been made to the IPPs come to 17.3 billion cedis. That is what government has spent so far.
What document is this?
This is a document from the Finance Ministry that talks about the payments to the IPP. So
since when?
From 2017. So at the time that Honorable Suhini asked the question and the response that was given by the Finance Minister, it was in respect of just 3 IPPs, payments made to just 3 IPPs.
AXA, Car Power, and Sem Power.
Exactly.
So Ameri, Amandi, Sunona Suli was not part.
Yeah, they were not part. So that was a specific question and the response given. So that is not to suggest that government has just made only 935 million to the IPPs. In fact, there was a story published by even Manjor Online somewhere February 2021 that puts the payment to IPPs to around 12 billion cedis as at February 2021, as captured by Manjor Online. So definitely what government had paid to the IPPs is in essence.
But was it all for excess capacity charge? Because you see, paying a payment to IPP can be for power produced. But if you say for excess, because the impression is being created that a 50 billion deficit, 25 billion is banking sector, 17 billion is excess capacity charge, and 8 billion is COVID. Yes, the figure, the document here tells me it's 17 billion. But I'm seeing payments to GMPC, Litasco, Stratcom Energy, GOIL, and all of this in addition. That cannot be excess capacity charge payment.
You see, what government has is a 17 billion. Let me tell you this also. You know, because of the fungibility of money, sometimes some of these payments are also done in a form of securitization. Okay, so in total, this is what government puts out, and unless the IPPs come out to say that the 17 billion government is talking about is not what we have received. Okay, so as per government records, how much has been paid to the IPPs is 17 billion. I haven't seen any.
But I'm saying that some of the people, the fuel suppliers are not IPPs, or it's part of the IPP payments, because I see IPPs under A and I see fuel suppliers here. When you put everything together, I get 17 billion. So payments to Vitor, GMPC, and Co. How does that become part of excess capacity payment to IPPs? Do you understand my point? You have AXA,
understand.
You have Car Power, you have Suno. I understand all of that. When you put that together, that gives you a different figure. But when you add everything to get 17 billion,
that's what I'm saying, that
because it's 10 billion. If you put the IPP payments, it's 10 billion. From the document you gave me, when you add fuel suppliers, it's 7 billion. That makes it 17.
So the IPP payments you see there is a cash component. I'm telling you that some of the payments are also done through securitization, but the totality of it is a 17 billion.
But are they all excess capacity generation payments?
To the best of my knowledge, that's it.
Fair enough. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll deal with a few other issues. 25 billion spent on banking sector reform. Some people say they still haven't received anything. All right, and what is the way forward? I think that's one of the things people want to know. So he said a lot about how we got here, but if people feel he should tell us more about where we are going, maybe his spokesperson will add a few points to that. Stay with us. Welcome back. So tonight we've been talking about the Vice President's speech on Thursday, and we're asking Dr. Gideon Boako to explain some issues. Just a final point on that issue. So, I think I need to say something here. For the first time, the issue of the 50 billion deficit has been explained, because everybody was made to believe that it was COVID. right? Fair enough. Now you're saying it's 17 billion excess capacity, which I challenge. I think it's 10 billion from the figure you give me, no problem. But you are saying you spent 25 billion cedis on banking sector cleanup. In November 2020, I think the vice president said we had spent 21 billion. And now the figure is now 25 billion?
Yeah.
For banking sector, that's serious.
Yeah, so that's the figure, and that is.
And he says these are borrowing, so this is different from even the 5% of a bank's corporate profit before tax, which is also a banking sector resolution revenue policy. Remember that?
Yeah.
So you are saying that we borrowed 25 billion cedis to help solve the banking sector crisis.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Hey. But
that's
but what was the size of the problem you were solving that required 25 billion in borrowings?
How do I put a measure on the size?
Yeah, because he said we had 4.6 million deposits.
Yeah.
So which means we know the quantity of the problem in terms of financially.
Yeah. I think to a large extent, this 25 billion cedis went to cushion up the deposit funds and make sure they are safe. And if you want the fine granulars of it, I think we can get the Bank of Ghana and Finance Ministry to provide the granular data. But this is the extent of expenditure that has been made so far with regards to the banking sector cleanup. I understand there are still a few people who have not even having issues with their reconciliation of accounts.
Some people have still not been paid. Even when after the speech, some people send message that they've still not received their money.
Yeah, sometimes you hear comments like, I have a colleague lecturer at KNUST who even sent me a message that his funds were locked up with one of the finance institutions, but there are issues with reconciliation of the accounts because some records have been lost. So to a large extent, it was quite a lot of expenditure on the banking sector cleanup. Yeah.
25 billion.
Yeah.
There's a view that, and I'll probably end with this one. This was Dr. Kobi Mensah. He made a post on Facebook, I think it was Twitter, and I'm just going to read it to you as we close. And it says, Doc's speech seems different from his previous speeches because apparently he didn't seem as confident, the laughter was reduced, the sweat was more. He said a few other things. He says, Dr. Bawumia, this is Dr. Kobi Mensah of Legon. He said, Dr. Bawumia has been less confident in his own lecture. Since he began, he's no longer in his comfort zone. No jabs, no slogans, no belly laugh, more glitches, moments of dysgraphia, pensive and jittery audience, not to talk of selective evidence. This is a communications lecturer who feels that it wasn't a good performance in his view.
Yeah, that is his view, but permit me to say I haven't heard Dr. Kobi Mensah say any good thing about the vice president, so this is not news to me. Yeah.
But for those of you who work in his team, do you feel you could have done better?
Oh, I mean, we are human, and human efficiency is not always 100%. Insofar as we're dealing with a human institution, we put out what we think to the best of our ability and knowledge was right at the time and was okay. Of course, people have their own views and can express their views as to how they see the whole thing, but I think by and large, the object for which we set out to do this was achieved. We wanted to make sure that the vice president becomes accountable to Ghanaians. The vice president rose to the occasion when he did it most to speak to people. People were clamoring for him addressing the nation, and he did. Like any other scholar putting up a scholarly piece, when you finish, other professors will look at it and say, these T's and I's were not crossed. Those are, genuine comments, and we are.
So you take them in good faith?
We take them in good faith, and as we move along, like people are saying this time around, there wasn't so much of jab on NDC and all of that, which people think is good for us. So as we go forward, we listen to people, and it's a human institution.
All right.
We get things right, we get things wrong, but we net it off and see that the positives outweigh the negatives, and then we move ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Gideon Boako. He's the spokesperson to the Vice President. We've been discussing the speech he gave on Thursday, checking some of the facts, and also trying to see where the way forward is. Thanks for watching. The Business Dashboard is next. My name is Bernard Avle. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.